All right, joining us tonight from Los Angeles, editor for Kotaku.com, Mike McWhorter, and all the way from San Francisco, executive editor for Electronic Gaming Monthly, Shane Bettenhausen. Gentlemen, welcome to this loop that is surely going to make the fanboys froth angrily, regardless of what is said. Shane, I'd like to start with you. Just today, a Sony European vice president said that the company, Sony, is in discussions regarding Final Fantasy XIII's exclusivity. And now rumors are flying all around the internet claiming that Final Fantasy might show up on the 360. That's blasphemous for many. I mean, how damaging would it be for Sony if they lost perhaps their most coveted exclusive?
I mean, if they were to really lose Final Fantasy XIII, that would be a huge deal. But I don't think that's what this means. I think it could mean that a game in the Final Fantasy XIII universe could come to Xbox 360, and that would be, something would hurt Sony, but not that badly.
Mike, do you agree that the rumors, of course, are vague at best, but some people obviously are quick to say, well, that means the major titles coming to 360, but at this point, that's anywhere but confirmed, right?
As far as I know, and I don't know if he was just talking out of turn or out of context. I'm not really putting too much validity into that statement. We'll see, though. I wouldn't rule it out.
Well, Mike, in the gaming world, it's like kind of the word exclusive seems to have lost its weight a bit. I mean, it used to mean that you could only play a particular game on one system, but now it means that you can only play it for 3 months on one system, and then a special edition comes out on a competing console. I mean, is there any worth to exclusive games anymore if they don't actually stay that way?
Well, I definitely think that there's some worth to it, even with timed exclusives. People will still want to get something on one platform first. But that said, if somebody knows that something like Grand Theft Auto is coming out on another system, they may wait. I don't think that timed exclusives have really been that successful. And given the fact that timed exclusives or exclusives have just kind of expired over the past couple years, mm-hmm. I don't think that's a really a big deal for console manufacturers anymore.
Shane, should a gamer ever assume that any title is actually exclusive or going to be that way?
At this point, I would only suggest that first-party games are going to be exclusive. Like, true third-party exclusives are going away. I mean, Microsoft is willing to, put money out, co-marketing dollars to get these timed exclusives. So it's not in the third party's best interest to put a game only on one console when you're going to make a lot more money if you put it out on both.
Sure. Well, the console war is definitely heating up now, and Microsoft, they seem to be poaching Sony exclusives left and right. I mean, Assassin's Creed, Grand Theft Auto, Devil May Cry, and that's just a couple. I mean, Shane, when you add all these titles up, how big of a deal is this for Sony?
It is kind of a big deal, and for a long time it looked like Sony only cared about their first-party games, and they weren't willing to spend the money to get these exclusives like Microsoft. But we did see some positive things, like Sony and Namco formed a new company called Celius, and they're only going to make games for PS3. We haven't seen any of those games yet, but it does show you that Sony knows that it is still important in the long run.
Mike, it seems that you go to a couple Sony fan sites, you read the forums, and people say, oh, it's just Devil May Cry or it's just Ace Combat. But really, don't these add up at the end of the day? If you're a Sony gamer, don't you say, hey, we'd like some exclusives?
Absolutely. I understand it doesn't make a lot of financial sense at this point to put Devil May Cry 4 only on the PlayStation 3. But it's definitely going to hurt them. I don't think that some people have really expected something like Devil May Cry 4 to come to the Xbox 360.
Well, how is Microsoft doing this, though, Mike? I mean, are they flexing financial muscle behind the scene to get these titles? Or are publishers just looking at the 360's installation base and saying, hey, look, we can't ignore those figures. There's quite a few of them out there.
To some degree, I think it's a little of both, but I think that the install base of the Xbox 360, it can't be ignored. They've got something like 10 million consoles sold through worldwide, and compare that to 1.5 million PlayStation 3s. And maybe those numbers aren't right, but it's just not going to make any sense to release something for such a small fan base.
Shane, do you think Bill Gates is dipping into his Supercuts fund to get some of these third-party games?
I mean, I don't think they're giving huge money hats, but they are doing a lot of co-marketing. That's true. And games like Dead Rising, we know that Microsoft had a big part in that game coming to Xbox 360, but it ended up being a really smart move for Capcom. And I think that's why we're seeing Capcom doing Devil May Cry. They know where the money is.
Sure. All right. Well, Shane, you kind of alluded to this earlier, but I really want to flesh it out. Is it crazy to assume that in just a few years' time that third-party exclusives, they simply won't exist because they don't make sense to publishers?
But I think we'll see a turnaround when the PS3 becomes a more viable platform in Japan. The Japanese developers, I think they will start to make more exclusives for PS3 simply because 360 is on life support in Japan. Mm-hmm. But I think, in general, we will see more multi-platform fare moving forward.
Mike, would you agree with that?
Maybe. I think that with the 10 to 20 Xbox 360s out there, I don't think that they're going to want to pass on that opportunity to sell to those people.
All right, I want to thank our guests, Mike and Dan, for joining us in The Loop, an Attack of the Show exclusive, just so you know.
Attack of the Show, weeknights at 7, only on G4.